Hi, I'm Stephanie Powell, and welcome to Talk About It.
Cherrie Britton here with Stephanie and Steve.
Morning, this is Steve. I'm with Stephanie and Cherrie.
Our topic today is the art of conversation.
Let's talk about it.
When we talk about the art of conversation, what are we talking about? What is that?
Conversation, it's a work of art that can be learned. It's not just something that you are born with. For many of us, it is not a innate quality, and it can be learned. So conversation to me is the encounter of polished minds, tactful enough to listen, confident enough to express their true beliefs, and subtle enough to search out the reason behind the thoughts being shared.
That, I think it is very cogent, very profound.
It's from Berg. He has written a book on the art of persuasion.
What was it that was most resonant with you from Berg's definition?
What I liked was you have to be subtle enough to search the other person's mind, to be attentive, to not be distracted and look away and become multitasking when you're having a conversation, to be attentive to that person, to look at them when you're talking to them, respond in an appropriate way and not an answer that does not fit the conversation.
Absolutely. And I think we'll get, as we get into how to have good and effective conversations, you will decode for us specifics on how to do just that. So how do we go about having
I looked at traits that would constitute the art of a conversation or an effective conversation. And one is to be respectful and appreciate the other person's thinking. Don't just disregard it and not say it's not valid just because you don't believe it. Be respectful and be prepared, particularly at work. If you are going to have a conversation with your boss about a raise or a promotion, then you got to do your homework and you've got to know what you're asking for. You've got to know the rules of the game. So be prepared and let the other person, once you present, let the other person do the talking and listen. Number 3 is to be an active listener. And as I shared earlier, when you're an active listener, you're looking at the person. Eye contact is important. Responding in an appropriate manner to a question or an event is important. Be clear. Some conversation, when they get off the rail, people stop listening. And when you stop listening, then you stop being unclear in your purpose. The purpose of what you're trying to share or persuade or understand is lost. When you're conversing with someone, be clear, but be inclusive, probe, and compliment. Conversation requires a level of politeness, tact, subtlety, and politeness. That's kind of lost on us today. Politeness, particularly on some levels, but politeness, it is always in fashion.
You told me in every relationship, no matter how intimate the relationship, there are boundaries. And so how do you have conversations and how do you probe? Because I think probing and inquiring, that's important, but how do you do that in a way where you still maintain the integrity of boundaries?
Well, subtlety and tact are really, with your example just now, I think if you exercise subtlety and tact, you know how far to go.
I think those are good tools to rely upon to kind of help you gauge, okay, how far do I go?
Mm-hmm.
For example, I was going around Columbus Circle and this car, something happened where, we have a fender bender. I had to call out. I told my coworkers, hey, I have to attend to my car, not going to be in. And when I did make it back into the office the next day, my office mate asked me. Now, most people's reaction was, oh my goodness, Stephanie, you're back in the office today. It's great to see you. Oh, are you fine? Were you hurt? Are you okay? My office mate, who's a very inquisitive soul, her first question to me was, I kid you not, what kind of car do you drive? And so for me, that was a non-starter for a conversation. Because in my mind, I'm thinking she couldn't care less about my well-being. You know, was there a family member in the car? Is everyone okay? See, those are the kinds of things that will go to my mind. My first thought is the well-being of the individual. It didn't open the door to a nice, warm, and robust conversation. So yeah, I think subtlety, tact, diplomacy, those are good tools to help guide in terms of the type of probing and how deeply.
She exercised lack of tact and no subtlety.
Brother Steve, I'm going to go to you. If you can, please give us your perspective on what do you feel the art of conversation is?
The art of conversation for me is just being very engaged with the other person, making them feel like they're the most interesting person in the world. A reporter interviewed two political candidates, I think it's for president. Now, these are two men that are going to be president of the United States potentially. She sat down with both of them. And when her interview was done, she came out of the interview feeling like she was the most important person and not the candidate. One candidate made her feel like he was the most important person. The other candidate made her feel like she was the most important person. So the question could be asked, which one was more engaging? A person will walk away feeling good about themselves. They feel like that, you know, he made me feel like I was important. And I'm going to tell you, I think about that all the time. And I think asking questions, Stephanie, is so when I'm talking to someone, if they asking me questions, they've won me. Tell me about your neighborhood. Tell me some of the challenges you have. You know, that's a good question.
Are there any other key components that you feel are critical to creating a good and effective conversation?
Being honest. Don't act like you know. Don't act like somebody that you're not. Because a lot of times people can spot that. And if you want to destroy a conversation, that's one way to do it. One of the benefits of having effective conversation is that you close the gap in a lot of ways. Even though you might have differences, you can still have a gap there. And that kind of leads me to another one. And that's just building bridges, establishing a context for, you know, future conversations. So you don't stop with that conversation. I think there's going to be conversations yet to come. And that's what's exciting about it. When somebody wants to come back, have lunch again with you or converse with you again or talk again, you know, I think that is important. And of course, it helps, I think, to establish and strengthen healthy bonds. And we've heard it over and over again, and we'll probably say it a few more times. It nurtures relationships. In the end, you're nurturing a relationship when you're having a conversation, you know, with people. And I like the fact, there's some things I just added to that. It sort of resolves our curiosity. And I think all of us that are here today, we're very curious people. And as I'm getting to know Aunt Cherrie, I believe she is too. And I am. You know, I remember I got a chance not long ago to read some records about when I was an infant. And I said, man, I was pretty curious. I was, you know, just always into looking at stuff and looking at people and stuff. But that's what conversation does. And when you engage it, you know, it does kind of resolve that, you know, that curiosity. But those are some of the things that I see. Mainly clarity, harmony, nurturing, building bridges. Those are the things that I see as benefits of having effective conversation.
You talked about the effect of listening and being observant. That was one of the things that really stood out, observing, because when I worked in higher education and was a professor in communications, and I would go in and every day I was a student of, are they understanding? Am I communicating with clarity? Are they Are these concepts resonating with them? And I would read that body language and be a keen observer and use that as an opportunity through my observations to engage people who may not have been the most participatory. Being observant, I agree, is a real key factor because people will tell you without using words, they will tell you if they don't agree. They will tell you if they don't understand a word you just said. They will tell you if they understand it a little bit, but there's a part of it that I don't quite. If you're really observant, you can pick up all of that. What are your thoughts on that, on Cherrie?
You know, that is so true, Steph. When you gave that example, I thought about how I could read my students in my class. And what I had to learn to do was to sometimes ask, but sometimes just figure out from them how they learn. Some people learn by touching, some people learn by seeing, and some learn just by hearing. I have to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did the first couple of weeks of my classes, I would talk to my students and I would see who was taking notes and who was just listening and who was just sitting there looking out the window.
There are those two.
So what I had to do was to gear my teaching to the learning pattern of how my students would get what I was trying to teach them. And I had one student after my second semester of teaching. I didn't know this the first semester, learned it the second semester. Mm-hmm. And she says, I get what you're saying all the time. Because when I would give a salient point that I wanted to remember, I learned by seeing, and I'll say, do you see what I'm saying?
Mm.
That was always my question. Not do you hear what I'm saying? Because I learned by seeing. I said, do you see what I'm saying? And at first they were like, but the ones who learned by sight said yes. The ones who learned by hearing would always ask, would you repeat that again? So it's that's one of the benefits of not only conversation but communication. So that's my example for that, Steph.
Yes, that's so interesting. But the other thing, and it ties in, you reminded me on Cherrie something Brother Steve said earlier about the checklist.
Yes.
You can feel it, because to me, a conversation is tailored to you or the two of you. And it shouldn't feel like it's just a repeat of an experience you've had with someone else. There might be some similarities, but it should be uniquely tailored to the people who are conversing. It shouldn't feel like, it feels like you've just kind of taken your little checklist and applied it here. And I have to tell you, I literally experienced that. I went to Art's, this is a few years ago, his 30-year high school graduation. Art graduated from the school your youngest son, Byron, graduated from, Duke Ellington. And so we went to Duke Ellington School of the Arts, 30-year high school graduation for Art. And we were talking. It's so funny. I get along with the Ellington alums. Somehow they think I went to Ellington. I guess I know so many Ellington graduates, and then I'm a former dancer, so I'm an artist myself. But so it felt like my reunion. So I was talking and engaging with, Art's former classmates, and came across one guy. And I remember him from back in the high school days because I knew Art and his twin Scott back in high school and their friends. So we all used to hang. So this is someone I even knew from back in the day. So I'm seeing him, we're conversing. He's a totally different person. And he's really into this entrepreneurial sales stuff. So he uses every opportunity for his little sales thing. But I'm thinking, okay, he's putting that aside for a minute and we're just having a real conversation between the two of us. And he's going on and he's talking and he's really into it and we're engaging. You fast forward an hour or two later in the evening, we're in the banquet hall, fine catered meal. We're at the various tables. And at one point, this same guy stands up and he addresses the crowd. Do you know that what he delivers to us is a repeat of the conversation? And I'm just like, wow. I guess I was just the practice. I was
practicing on you
for the sales pitch that he's about to give us. Like, I'm just sitting there like, he never turns it off. He's always on sales time. He's always the salesman. But you have been in those situations where you feel like, wow, someone has said this same thing a million times to so many other people, and it just doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel like real connection, like we're really understanding each other better. It just feels like, okay, we're just exchanging words.
Steph, can I put another spin on it? You said that you were familiar with a lot of the Duke Ellington alumni and the Duke Ellington students, and they probably feel comfortable with you. I mean, you are Miss Comfortability, you know that. So he probably chose you to practice that speech on.
It's like, there she is. I'm going to get this thing down. She's a communication person too. She'll let me know if I'm kind of off my game. And
you probably listened to his spiel, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah,
I really did.
So I'm going to give him 2 points for insight.
Oh my goodness. Oh, what about those unique conversations? I mean, you talked about this a bit on Cherrie, being in a different country. You gave a couple of great examples. Being in a different country, you don't even speak the same language, really. But music is one of those universal languages. And so you found common ground around that. And then being in goodwill with the gentleman in line in front of you, and that human connection. What are some other examples, like if you're in a situation in which someone is an introvert and someone is an extrovert, how do you have an engaging and robust conversation with someone who has just a totally different approach to communicating? Is there a way to kind of bridge that gap and still walk away with, feeling like, wow, that was a really meaningful exchange?
If the introvert is the person you're trying to communicate with, and the extrovert is the one who is doing the communicating, that's easy. But if you switch it around and have the introvert doing the conversation and the extrovert, the listener, then that becomes challenging. And that's when they're going to have to go back and read the book on the art of conversation.
Yes. And there are books out there.
Yes. So it all depends, on the person. I have been very fortunate in my life to be around people of many, many cultures and different races. The Bahamas is my second home. And my first encounter with the Bahamas, I took the boys when they were like 9 and 12 on their first trip to the Bahamas. And because I was in working at the university at the time, I wanted to see the College of the Bahamas. So I went to the provost and I said, I was from the States and I was a professor at UDC and I wanted to just take a tour of their university. And she said, fine. She's got on the phone, called this young man, and he came. His name was Lincoln Marshall. And you know Scrub.
I do. I do.
It was Scrub.
Okay.
And the first thing he said to me was, "Oh, from the States, come, girl, come. You know, it was like he had known me for 15 years, and I was like, and he was 26 years old, and I think I was in my middle 30s. And he took me on a tour of the university, and it was like we had known each other all of our lives. He had the most wonderful introverted way of talking, and it was my first trip there, so I was not as familiar. He was very familiar, but tactful. He never got out of line. It was in that Bahamian familiar way of talking, you know, like, oh, girl, you know. It was not offensive to me.
Yeah.
So that one visit turned into a 30-year relationship, not only with the College of the Bahamas, but the government of the Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
I get invited to weddings and funerals and track meets, and you know, it's like a second home. I used to be the carrier for shrimp for one of the diplomats.
Like, I never knew that.
Yes, I mean, he would call and he would say, "What do you do this weekend?" And I would say nothing. He says, "Okay, go to the embassy. They had 50 pounds of shrimp. Catch this flight." And I was on my way to the Bahamas with 50 pounds of shrimp. And the guy that I was getting for was a member of parliament. Shrimp is very high in the Bahamas. It's very cheap in the United States compared to their prices. So I became their shrimp carrier. And he has learned to trust me over the years. He wanted to send his daughters to the States. This is the diplomat now. He wanted to send his daughter to the States. He put them in my care when they came to American University and George Washington University. Mm-hmm. So, and it's all from that first conversation.
So tell me, you had talked about at the top of our conversation, this something that you can learn, that it's not necessarily innate, that you can learn this.
Yes.
How do you advise people to really learn and work toward mastery of conversation?
First, you got to want to do it. You've got to say to yourself, I'm not good at this. Either I want to do it personally or I want to do it for some other purpose. But you got to want to do it because it's truly an art. It's an art that you learn through practice. Let me put it that way. You can't just get the book and read it one time and do it. You've got to practice it. Because if you have no inkling of gene of subtlety in your body, then you got to learn how to be subtle, how to say, you have, hold a minute, I think you have some gum on your shoe, rather than say, you got gum on your shoe, you know, just the way you say it. You have to learn, you have to want to do it step first. And then once you get to do it, pick up everything you can read, talk to people about how to do it, watch people who are good at it, and just practice and keep practice and practice and practice. And I've seen it work because my present husband was quite an introvert. He's not an introvert anymore. He's a retired journalist. When you took him out of the journalism camp, he was a total introvert. So, and I've seen him practice over the years, and he's much better at it now. So it's practice, Steph.
He is, because I never would have thought he was an introvert. Never would have thought that JB was an introvert.
You know what he said? He said when as a kid in high school, when they would go to dances, he would stand in the corner. He would never ask a girl to dance. And some of the girls, he said, were bold enough to go and says, "Come on, John, let's dance." And he would dance then, but not on his own request. So, but he wanted to improve his conversation. He wanted to learn the art of conversation. But when you put a pencil in his hand and he'll question you to death as a journalist, which is a skill, and you know that, Steph.
Yes.
That's an educated skill. Yeah. That's not something innate.
True.
But the desire has to be there, and just once the desire is there, pick up every piece of information you can and start practicing.
I think the breakthrough for me, and I think I have a pretty good testimony, because by nature and by preference, I'm an introvert. And there was times in my life the conversation was not easy for me. I would avoid it if I could. And but I think it came about through self-discovery and really learning about myself. Because I think to be a good conversationalist, you have to have a self-awareness. You have to know who you are. Plain and simple as that. You put me in a ministerial situation and you think this is a different person. And then I'll be in a crowd of people, and I go into my introvert stage, and you're like, boy, he's quiet. I've had so many people tell me that. You're so quiet. Why are you so quiet? I said, that's just who I am. And I think too, Stephanie, you have to be comfortable with that. And I think you are. We know each other now a while, and you're very comfortable with that. You know how to be a good conversationalist being an introvert. And I think that's what our listeners need to hear. Well, because there was a time, and probably several years ago, I would have said, well, I'm an introvert. I can't learn. When I see a book, The Art of Conversation, I probably would say, I don't associate with that. That's not me, but now I look, and public speaking, I do a lot of it. I'm still learning. I practice in a mirror. I'm real gun shy with video. I'm confessing. And hearing myself on a tape, I still got to overcome that, and I will. But I would say, first of all, just a self-awareness. Know who you are. Be comfortable who you are. Don't apologize to anybody. In my view, in my opinion, that's the way God made you. So embrace it, love it. I get up in the morning and I thank God. So God, I thank you for the Steve Morrow that you created. That's what I say. I just go through that routine. I learned to almost love myself for who He made, God made me to be, and who I am. And once I get that, I can talk to anybody, because I'm not going into a conversation comparing. I know I'm jumping around here a little bit. That's one thing you probably want to be very careful of when you're conversing with people. You don't want to compare yourself to them. You don't want to outdo them. You don't want to try to impress them. I think you have to watch that. Sometimes we have this ministerial jargon, and I have to be careful when I'm conversing with people that I don't come across as a minister. I don't want people to know sometimes, because once they know, that conversation changes. Oh, he's going to preach to me. He's going to be preachy. He's going to be judgmental. And I want to, just speak for all preachers. Most of us aren't. If we're good, sound, educated. I'm trying to think of other words to use. We're trained not to do that, especially as chaplains. You go into a setting, and you're ministering to all different peoples. I put judgment at the door. It's something I pray through, that I don't have a bit of it. Obviously you judge surroundings, things like that. And that's a whole different subject.
That's so true. And I think the self-awareness is the key aspect. So really understanding that, okay, this is a deficiency or an area in which I can improve and want to improve, and then be intentional about doing it.
Yeah.
But you can decide still how you're going to show up in the world. You can be an introvert and know this is my basic nature, but when I'm in certain situations or to improve relationships or to foster understanding, sometimes you have to stretch outside of your comfort zone to achieve the goals that you have in your life, because people may not always understand, okay, she's just reserved. People don't always get that. And so sometimes, you have to be a student and study and work. Doing it for business is one thing. Totally different in a personal aspect. So that's really, really interesting.
And then in the community, and I'm thankful for what I do as a chaplain. I get involved in the community. It's a wonderful thing. I do invocations, and I get to meet people. I get to have conversations. I didn't mention this, but I'll bring it up now. I got the chance to talk to the police chief. It was the first time just me and him talking about. And at first, I was a little uncomfortable. I'm gonna be honest. I'm like, okay, and I'm always thinking about what I'm going to say and everything. But it's just amazing how natural it was. Because we were in a common place. It was an awards ceremony for citizens, police-like citizens who go out in the community. They like a liaison between the police and the community, and these people go through classes and all that. So I was there. I did the invocation, and I got a chance to chat with the police officer, or the chief of police, and it was very rewarding. And I asked about his family. I did the chaplain thing. You ask about his family. I can get away with some stuff because there's just things that you expect chaplains to ask for, but of course all of us can ask about that, and people love when you ask about their family. In some ways, they do. But the community, I think, can improve tremendously. And I mentioned police, and I'm very thankful that there is more communication between police and community. It might be a good time to bring that up. And I think there's some helpful things, not just in our city, but hopefully where you guys are, you're seeing that change. And there's opportunities for people to get involved. And I think, and I would definitely encourage people, if you have some issues, any kind of issues, I think it starts with conversation. Where can I go that I can be heard? I can speak up, and say things and do things, and to make it more effective. But to sum all this up, I think that it improves our personal, social, and work relationship. It's very connected to relationships. It gives us an opportunity to meet interesting people. As far as I'm concerned, everybody is interesting. I don't care if we're different. If I don't agree with them, they are still interested. But I'm kind of addicted to that. I have to be honest. I just make that a priority. This is an interesting person, and they're worth my time. I found out it's really another world out there, that I'm not familiar with, but now I am. So that's what I think.
Perfect note to end it on. An effective conversation opens up a whole new world to us.
Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe to our Talk About It YouTube channel and turn on notifications. Also, check us out on our social media. Hope to see you next time.